Hello, everyone. We thank you for hanging in there with us. We had some serious technical difficulties, but here we are. Welcome to New Hope's Women's Ministry program, In Search Of, where we search for the intriguing, the informational, and the controversial from a spirit-filled perspective. We're located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and my name is Marie Brathwaite. Today, we go in search of how to choose a mate. Last month, we explored and highlighted the fact that we, as women, are woefully unprepared for marriage and all its vagaries. Both family and church are very lacking in this life-altering teaching. Ergo, these statistics. The national marriage rate is in 2019 was 16.3%. The national divorce rate in 2019 was 7.6%. 9 out of every 1,000 U.S. residents are divorced. Nearly 2,400, that's 2,400 divorces happen every single day in the U.S. And 8 years is the average duration that these marriages last. Some of us might be saying, well, we're past that age where this advice is meaningful, but that's not so. If you have sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, you should share this information and they would benefit. Just because you've been married happily for 40 years, 30 years, whatever it may be, we still have to teach and instruct the generation coming behind us. Here to help us navigate these dark, murky waters is Dr. Beverly Gordon. Dr. Gordon is originally from Kingston, Jamaica, and a graduate of Northern Caribbean University School of Nursing. She earned her doctoral degree in clinical psychology and her master's in counseling psychology from Immaculate University in Pennsylvania, USA. Her 42 years of service has included roles in nursing, psychology, and higher education. She has authored and co-authored research papers for professional journals, as well as several women's devotionals. Dr. Gordon is a frequent speaker for community, church, and professional events. She currently has a private practice in Norristown, Pennsylvania, and teaches psychopathology, part-time in the School of Graduate Studies at Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Dr. Gordon. I am awed and honored to be here with you and overjoyed that you agreed to come and share your expertise with us. Now, I am going to stop talking and sit back to be edified by you. So you have the floor. Please instruct us.
Thank you so much for your warm welcome. It's a pleasure for me to be here this evening and to be talking about this very important subject in regards to choosing a mate. You know, it's very interesting when I listen to the statistics that you read earlier on, Marie. I found myself thinking, in spite of those not very good statistics, people are so eager to get married, and the marriage industry is so very much alive. I believe that the focus tends to be on the wedding day, and there's a lot of preparation that goes in to getting ready for the wedding day. Unfortunately, as much preparation is not really done to prepare for the marriage. And so tonight we're going to talk about some areas of preparation for marriage. The first slide that we want to look at is expectations. Expectations. What are the expectations of individuals who decide to get married? What are they looking for? What do they expect to happen? And so, in some cases, the woman is looking for a knight in shining armor, you know, the perfect man. Everything is just right about this man. I actually spoke with someone this week who described to me two individuals. She was trying to make a choice between two individuals. And one of the individuals, she has a kind of a list that she's looking to see if if someone will come along who fits all of these criteria that's on her list. And the one person actually fits all the criteria. Interesting thing is now she's worried and concerned because he seems to be too perfect. On the other hand, she doesn't want to let him go because she might never meet someone who fits all the criteria ever again. So she's in a quandary. And then she's considering another individual who does not meet all the criteria, but he's so much fun. So what is a criteria? How should she decide who she really wants to marry? What is this marriage thing all about, and what should be her expectations? Are we is it that we should be looking for the perfect person? And what does perfection mean in regards to a spouse? Some people are looking for someone to complete them. Well, one in mathematics, 1 plus 1 equals 2, but in marriage, 1 plus 1 is supposed to equal 1. So how does that work? 1 plus 1 equals 1. So some people envision that it means that each person comes to the marriage not quite complete, but when they find their soulmate, this person is going to complete them. This person will make them happy. The 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 general um the general idea of someone making you happy tends to lead to disappointment, because the reality is that nobody can actually make you happy, and the best formula tends to be when each person comes to the union already feeling complete in themselves, not perfect, but feeling that they can stand alone, feeling that if there was nobody to for them to get married to, they would still be able to make it through life because they are at a stage where they're mature enough and they understand enough about themselves so that they can actually function alone. And so getting married is a choice, not a necessity. And
Mhm.
I know that sounds strange, but actually, when the desperation is taken out of the equation, it makes for a better decision making. Some people are expecting someone to take care of them, whether it's the woman expecting a man who will come along and take care of her so that she doesn't have to make decisions and she doesn't have to put out a whole lot of effort because he will take care of her. Or it might be a man who's waiting for a woman who will just come along and she will take care of him. She will have all his clothes nicely lined out in his drawers and in his closet, and he won't have to think about that. She will have his meals ready and waiting on the table whenever he comes in from work or from wherever he's been, and she will just take care of things. She might even pay the bills as well. And then for some people, they're expecting nonstop romance, nonstop romance. So, it's they're on a high because they fell in love and the hormones took over and everything's just wonderful and everything is rosy colored and it's going to be like that forever because they live happily ever after. It's that fairy tale expectation. And then there's the damsel in distress who the man feels that he's coming in and he's going to make her okay. He'll be her rescuer, he'll be her defender, he's just going to be her everything. And then he gets into this marriage and this woman doesn't depend on him for anything. What is her problem? And then for some men, it might be that they're looking for someone that will obey them, that will make them feel strong and will give them the sense of power and control. Or maybe the expectation is for someone who will have my back, someone who's gonna, stand up for me, somebody who is gonna be me and them against the world. There are all these expectations. And some of them are not so good, some of them are okay, some of them are good. But the point is, what happens when the expectations are not met? And I don't know if you can see the cartoon on my slide there, but it actually said there are two people standing there. And, one says, "This is the real me," and the other person says, me as I really am, reality." And the person to whom the first one is speaking says, "How dare you not live up to my expectations?" And often in marriage, that's exactly what happens because someone goes into marriage with a particular expectation. The expectation is not met, and they're angry with this person because, this person is not fulfilling their need as they expected them to. And usually what happens is that the marriage ends up in divorce. But people talk about falling in love. And I often say that try not to fall in love because generally speaking, when we fall, we hurt ourselves. So I believe that the decision to get married or choosing a mate should be a matter of the heart that starts in the brain. We're we're given as human beings a brain that functions exceptionally well, usually, unless there is some other deficit, and we're able to think and reason and make decisions. Sometimes individuals say, Christian individuals actually say, "Well, I'm going to wait on a sign from the Lord to tell me if this is the right person or not," and they wait for a sign. And so they don't do a whole lot of thinking or a whole lot of preparing or anything. They're just kind of waiting for a sign. And sometimes something that looks like a sign happens, and they believe that this is a choice that I should make. But as I said before, God has given us a brain to think and reason and make decisions. And it's not a lack of faith to use that brain that God gave us. I believe that love should be a matter of the heart that starts in the brain. So it involves some thinking. Sometimes the question is asked, what is the best age at which to get married? And I want to say that there is no particular age that is the right age for marriage. And that would be on my next slide. There is no particular age that would be appropriate or the best age for someone to get married because people tend to mature at different rates and have different life experiences that affect the way they mature and how they mature and the timeliness with which they mature. Maturity is essential in marriage. Maturity is that process that we go through that increases our ability to think and reason, our ability to use experience to inform our future decisions. Maturity supports commitment. Commitment is something that is often very sadly lacking in many relationships nowadays. And not just nowadays, because honestly, um, yes, things might have gotten worse, but it's actually been pretty much similar throughout the ages. People go into marriage for different reasons, and it is said that men have a harder time committing than women. I don't know if that's a sexist statement, but men and women seem to be getting divorced, or initiating divorce at pretty much the same rate. But maturity does support commitment. Maturity is that aspect of our thinking that allows us to say, okay, in this moment, everything is not okay. We're angry with each other or something's gone wrong, but it won't always be like this, and we can get past this. Maturity is that thing that says, I've made a settled decision that this is the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And so I understand that there will be ups and downs, and life will be a series of experiences that some will be good, some will be bad, some will be middling, not so good, not so bad. There'll be different kinds of experiences. And that's actually what, in a way, adds spice to life. And so what happens with this other person that I have now joined myself to is that we will work together with a common goal to achieve our purposes and to achieve our objectives in life. And even though we'll face difficulties, we'll face them together. And instead of blaming each other for the difficulties, we will try to use our combined strength and energy to make life work. There are different stages of human development. And we develop in different areas. We develop cognitively, we develop socially, of course, we develop physically. And not to forget that we also develop spiritually, because it does also take a level of spiritual maturity to be able to forgive, for example, to be able to love unconditionally. Cognitive development, though, is particularly important because it helps us to be able to think and reason in a more mature way. The infant, when the infant at that stage of their development is not able to think rationally or to analyze information. The preschool child is not able to do that either. And even the school age child between ages 6 to 12, they're still not at a fully mature level where they can think and reason and make mature, abstract decisions. When one enters into adolescence, around about age 12 generally, the ability to think and reason in an abstract way now comes into play. And so the person starts to develop that ability to interact more effectively and more reciprocally with other individuals. And so by the time that person ends adolescence and moves into young adulthood, we would imagine that if nothing has gone wrong along the way that really hampered their development, they would now be at a point where they can interact with another human being, thinking and reasoning through situations. Not to forget the fact also, according to Erickson, in that early adulthood stage, say 20, 25 to 30 or so, that individual has now formed a basic sense of self, a basic sense of their identity, who they want to be, an ability to reason and think and to interact with others and to develop intimacy. And often when we talk about intimacy, people tend to think that we're talking about sex, which we will touch on before this is over. But actually, when we talk about intimacy, we're talking about the ability to be fully known and to fully know someone else, the ability to make oneself vulnerable and transparent to another human being, the ability to share oneself completely without shame or without prevarication or any kind of hesitancy. So as a person reaches, when the person reaches that level of maturity, I would say that if they have found the right person, they would be mature enough to get married. Now let's talk on our next slide about healthy relationships. I've identified four areas of relationships that are absolutely essential for a healthy relationship. The first one is respect. Respect. Um, I guess it starts with respect for oneself, because when we have a good self-esteem and a good sense of self, it causes us to respect ourselves and to be able to respect others. The Bible says that we should love others as we love ourselves. Therefore, it implies that if we're not able to love ourselves, and respect is a part of loving, if we're not able to love ourselves, we're not really able to love someone else. When the Bible also tells us that we should do unto others as we would have them do to us, that is also a part of respect, because that which I would feel embarrassed about, or that which I would feel belittled by, I would not do to another person. So respect goes a long way in marriage. There are so many times that I hear married couples speak to each other in really derogatory terms, really talk down to each other, or even call each other out of their names. Individuals, they're angry, and in the moment they'll say things that they probably would not say to their best friend, because they would say, oh, I can't say that, I can't embarrass this person that way, but they feel okay to embarrass their spouse that way. One of the rules I believe that all married couples should make with each other is that no matter how angry we get, we will not curse at each other. We will not call each other out of our names. We will stick to the issue at hand. But it's easy to say, but it seems to be so hard for people to actually follow through on. And that is actually one of the things that will help to maintain a marriage over time. One of the things that breaks down a relationship is when each time that something goes wrong, instead of dealing with the issue at hand, first of all, the couple, they go back into history and they replay every mistake that the other person ever made. Do you remember when you said so and so? And I remember when you did such and such. And the next thing you know, sometimes a simple event can turn into a huge problem, a huge conflict, simply because they didn't stick to the issues. They went into history. And then when they go into history, they move over into geography, because now they start to talk about where such and such happened and who was there and what the other person said. And the next thing you know, they're describing other, and it turns into it just snowballs into something really huge. So respect. And even respect in terms of respecting the other person's individuality, because one writer says that when you get married you become one, but you should not lose your own individual personality. So your personality is god-given. Your personality is god-given. You are a unique individual, and it was God's intention that you, the person that you are, should be here. And so no one should try to take another person's individuality from them. You have the right to be who you were designed to be. Of course, we also, just because we have the right to be here and to be who we are, doesn't give us the right to encroach on other people's rights. So there's a balance there. And so respect, mutual respect, will build a healthy relationship. Reciprocity. So, what do I mean by that? In some relationships, there's one person who does all the giving and the other person does all the taking. That does not make for a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship is one in which both people give and both people take. And it's a give and take. And sometimes there's compromise and there's always collaboration. So we always work together to make something good happen. And if sometimes we can't always both get our way because both ways are not the same necessarily, we find a way to achieve a compromise so that each person comes out of the situation feeling satisfied with the result because it was mutually agreed upon. Everything mutual, always with reciprocity, give and take. Trust is said to be the fundamental characteristic of a healthy relationship. It is not possible to build a relationship where there is mistrust. And that is why when someone violates the marriage vow and there is infidelity, it is such a hard thing to rebuild that trust and that connection to the level where it was originally, because trust is vital to building a healthy relationship. And intimacy, I mentioned intimacy before, which is actually making yourself vulnerable and allowing yourself to be fully seen and being willing to fully see someone else. So, we're talking about preparing for marriage and choosing a mate. And we talked about a healthy relationship, what a healthy relationship looks like. We're not looking for perfection because nobody is perfect. The Bible says that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So we already know that we're starting out with two imperfect people in an imperfect world trying to have a perfect relationship, right? And so we understand that there will be flaws and we understand that there will be difficulties. But there are some danger signs that would be on my next slide. There are some danger signs that we should look for when we're choosing a mate. And here are the danger signs that I've identified for tonight. Jealousy. If the person that you're thinking about marrying has a very jealous attitude, doesn't want you to associate with anybody else, really overly protective in a way, and just demanding of your time and your energies and your emotions to the exclusivity of your family and your friends, isolating you to a certain degree. That is a danger sign. Substance abuse. Whereas we're not called upon to be judgmental of the weaknesses of others, and to, demonize someone because of their weaknesses or difficulties that they might be having, it is wise to talk about these subjects and to make sure that even if there had been a substance abuse issue in the past, that it has been dealt with successfully, and not just a cursory discussion of the topic, but actually getting very deeply involved in that topic, because substance abuse can create situations in a relationship that will endanger the marriage. If the person is from an abusive home, it's important to talk about your childhood, your experiences. One of the things that I find these days is that people rush into marriage so quickly that they don't even have a chance to really get to know the other person. And getting to know the other individual is crucial. There's no need to rush. There's no need to rush. I know that life is short and all of that, but there's something as important as marriage. It's not something to rush into. I mean, we go to a lot of trouble to make sure that our financial investments are sound. If we're going to buy a house, that's something that we're going to go through all the processes to make sure that we're making the right decision and all that kind of thing. Young people choosing a college, well, some people don't make a good choice there, but generally speaking, there are a lot of processes to go through before making a decision. Well, something as important and as life-changing and long-lasting, supposed to be long-lasting, as marriage is something that we should take some time. Take a little time. Don't rush. There's no need to rush. The relationship is at the level where it's at, whether you're courting or engaged or whatever. Let it go through those stages. Let it go through the process. You will have time to see all kinds of sides of the person that you're planning to spend the rest of your life with. And by the way, it's important to not just observe this person that you're thinking about getting married to or possibly thinking about getting married to. It's important not just to observe that person in a dating setting, or you're going to a restaurant where everybody's on their best behavior, or you're going to a situation where the person will only be there for a limited period of time, and everybody's on their best behavior. And you can maintain a certain level of behavior for a period of time. You need to see that person in all kinds of different settings. With their family, how do they interact with their family? How do they interact? How does a man interact with other women? If it's a woman, how does she interact with other men? Does she have friends? What kinds of friends does she have? What are her hobbies? What are her activities that she takes, engages in? And what do you have in common? What do you do together that you enjoy? All of this takes time. Does this person have a quick temper? Well, that's something to be very careful about. Does this person tend to be controlling? Does this person tend to take out their anger on other people? We call it displaced aggression. So, they had a really bad day at work, and so they're on the phone with you this evening, and they're being rude and snappy, because and the excuse is, oh, I just had a really bad day. And if this is a pattern of behavior, it's not just a once, something really extraordinary happened, but it's a pattern of behavior. So you need time to see what the person's pattern of behavior is. You want to look out for the Jekyll and Hyde behavior, where when the person is in certain situations or certain company, they behave one way, and then when they're with you by yourself, they behave another way, or vice versa. You want to look out for that. Look for consistency in the pattern of behavior, and look out for that pattern of behavior that doesn't raise red flags like the ones I just mentioned earlier. As a matter of fact, the list that I just shared with you tends to describe an individual who has the potential to be an abuser. So, ladies, that's something to look out for. And as soon as I said that, I need to follow that statement up with not just ladies, because men also are sometimes abused, even though the majority of those who are abused are women, but it can happen both ways. So the point is, during this time when you're thinking about choosing a mate, it is a time to use all of your mental faculties, not just your emotions, but all of your mental faculties, all of your cognitive abilities to think and reason and make good decisions. So one of the things that to be noted is whether or not this person is an extrovert or an introvert, and how does that fit with your personality. Now, there's a saying that opposites attract. So it's possible that an introvert and an extrovert might actually complement each other and balance things out. The introvert is a person who, you know, say, for example, during this COVID pandemic, there are individuals who feel so happy just being at home and not having to go out to work, not having to go talk to people all day long, all this kind of thing. They love just being in their own space, in their own mind, doing things. And then there are other people, they feel as if they're going stir crazy because they need to get out and they need to talk to people, they need to interact with people. They get their energy from being with other people. So one's an introvert, the other's an extrovert. And knowing that ahead of time can actually avoid certain misunderstandings, and give you clues as to how to interact with your potential spouse, understanding the person's personality. Another area that needs to be addressed is the area of culture. So culture involves all the aspects of life that make up the person's pattern, that contributes to the person's pattern of behavior. Things like beliefs, values, lifestyle, beliefs about male, female roles, very important. So do we have the same, do we have similar beliefs? Do we have similar values? Values are very important. What is important to me? Is it important to this other person? What does this person believe about male female roles? What are going to be the expectations if we were to get married? Because getting married, is okay. So there's a big romance, And then there are different stages of the relationship, and it's not all wine and roses and flowers and ice cream all the way through. It's everyday life. It's getting up in the morning with your morning face, you know, and it's having minor difficulties during the day. It's struggling through paying the bills and going to work and raising the children and purchasing the house and getting groceries every week and cleaning the house. And it's all of that. It's everyday life. The difference is you're doing it with someone that you like. You got to like that person, not just love that person, but you need to like that person. You need to like being with that person. You need to enjoy being with that person so that even if you're in a difficult situation, you're with somebody who you like. So it doesn't feel as bad. But just imagine having to endure being with someone who you fundamentally dislike for a lifetime. Well, that might not work out. So all of this is important. And when I mention culture, that is not to say that two people from a different country who originate from a different country can't get married and get along together. That's not what this is about. Culture I'm talking about your basic beliefs, your values, your lifestyles, your beliefs about your role within the marriage. All of that is going to affect your relationship. Religion and spirituality. Does it really matter? Does it really matter if both of you have the same religious and spiritual beliefs? It does. Short answer, it does. Um, there are going to be enough adjustments between two individuals who grew up in a totally different home, came from two different parents, have a completely different genetic makeup, and all of that. And you had a different life experiences, and you come together and you try to make something work as a unit. If you have fundamentally different beliefs about your relationship with God, it is going to make a difference to the quality of your relationship. Are you both going to go to church together? Or are you not going to go to church? Or are you going to go to the mosque? Or is one going to go to the mosque and one go to the church? What is it that is going to bind you together, that is going to be bigger than yourself, that has the power to bind you together? It is your love of God and your commitment to God that will allow you to stay and work things out sometimes, depending on what that something is. The one thing in life that I never encourage anyone to do is to stay in an abusive relationship. So please understand that when I say stay and make things and work things out, I'm not talking about an abusive relationship. Um, but shared values and lifestyle really matters. And depending on the level to which, the degree to which you really actually value your spirituality, will determine how much it will affect your marriage. Above all else, or very important, seek counsel. A lot of people don't seek counsel because, I'm grown. I can make my own decision. I mean, I don't need anybody to tell me who's the right person for me. I don't need anybody to tell me whether I should get married or not, and actually some people resent any counsel. But the Bible says that there's wisdom in counsel. And it has been found that engaging in some form of premarital counseling improves your chances of marital satisfaction and the longevity of your marriage. It helps to identify weaknesses that may cause problems later on. It helps you to enhance your communication skills. It has been said that communication is the lifeblood of marriage and the lifeblood of relationships in general. And so, this opportunity to really talk through difficult topics will serve you well prior to marriage. It will help you to develop conflict resolution skills because conflict will arise. No, wherever there is more than one person in any situation, conflict is possible and conflict will arise. So it gives you a chance to see how you will deal with conflict and how your potential partner will deal with conflict. And finally, let's talk about what sex got to do with it. So people often go into marriage not having a whole lot of knowledge or real knowledge about sexuality, about their own sexuality. It's amazing to me. I was talking to someone very recently. I know that when I talk to individuals who were born, say, in the 30s, 40s, and even sometimes the 50s, I was born in the 50s, so, I'm in there. Sometimes people will tell you that they they did not get the information that they needed prior to getting married. So you would think that now, this is 2021, you would think that that's not a problem anymore because, sexuality is talked about so freely on television, everywhere. And there's sex education in the schools and all of that. But believe it or not, there are still individuals who are going into marriage not really understanding about sexuality. There are individuals who are dating and they don't understand their own sexuality. And so they put themselves into situations where they might end up behaving in ways that they did not intend to behave. So, as Christians, for example, we believe in abstinence prior to marriage. But if you put yourself in certain situations, you are a human being with normal reflexes and responses, and you might find yourself unable to control those emotions because you put yourself in a situation that lent itself to that behavior. So, first of all, guard well your situations. Um, know about your body. Understand your body. Understand which areas of your body are particularly responsive to sexual touch. Understand what your boundaries are. It's important to have boundaries. Understand what your boundaries are and understand how to implement your boundaries in given situations. Understand even later on, understand the stages of development, stages, lifespan stages, so that you will know that this the sexual responses and the sexual urges and desires that you had at 25 might not be the same at 55. Things change. Understand the difference between male and female functioning sexually. It is important because if you understand that sex was designed by God as a part of marriage, it's not something by the way, it's not something unpleasant or dirty. It is something that is intended to be a part of marriage. And by the way, it is also not only for procreation. It's actually something that God intended for us to enjoy. And there's much evidence for that. And so it's important before going into marriage to understand your own sexuality and that of your partner without putting yourself into compromising situations where your boundaries are violated. So sexuality is something that should be covered in premarital counseling, and all of this is important. Understand health issues that are related to sexuality also. So I hope there is so much more to say about this that I find myself trying to hold back on certain things because we don't have all night. But I hope that I've covered enough tonight that might stimulate your thinking so that you might want to think carefully as you choose a mate.
Wow. Um, you've given me so much to I don't even know where to start. One of our elders in the church said one of the things we should do also is to observe that person's family, the family dynamics, to also learn about that person. So I think that's it. That is very important because they can act one way with you, and then when you see them in their own element, it's a totally different thing. You've given us so much to digest. Let me ask you something. Do you think something like this should be taught in the Christian schools? Because we don't get that in-depth training about relationships in the not the private Christian schools nor the public schools. So I'm thinking if something like this was given as much emphasis as sexual education, we might be putting a dent in the statistics that I mentioned earlier.
Maybe. Actually, I'm in total agreement with subjects related to this matter to be taught in high school and college. Relationships are important, and we have different relationships at different stages of our lives, and it is so vital to how we operate in all the aspects of our lives that I believe that it is something that should be a part of our education. It prepares individuals for life, for the reality of life. And starting to think about it when you're in the situation is too late. It's too late. To be prepared ahead of time. What is it saying? To be prepared, to be forearmed is to be forewarned, or something like that. Or to be
Yes.
forewarned is to be forearmed.
um, you said there was a lot of things you said, but here's one thing. There's a question I need to ask before I ask my another question. I found these stats and I wanted to ask you about it. There are more than 2,500 online dating services in the U.S. and an estimated 8,000 worldwide. And the Christian dating sites are popping up everywhere now. Everything is Christian based. Um, what advice would you give somebody who said to you, "Well, I'm going to try the online dating"?
Okay, so this is an interesting question. It's a good one. Because nowadays everything is technologically and involved, and our communication has changed and all of that. However, in spite of the fact that technology has advanced so much, human beings have remained essentially the same. And so our thinking processes and our behaviors are essentially the same. I believe that if you are going to use a dating service, at least it ought to be a Christian dating service, but not every Christian dating service qualifies in my books as a Christian dating service. I also believe that it should not be your only mode of getting to know individuals. In addition to that, based on observation and certain experiences that I've had in working with individuals, it is imperative that you properly vet the information that you get about individuals online. There is real danger involved sometimes. Individuals' lives can be in danger as a result of getting involved with someone too quickly that you really don't know. Because even when you're dating somebody who you meet physically and interact with them and with the family and everything, there's still dangers to look out for, let alone somebody who inputs data into a data bank. They might tell you that I don't know, they have $10 million in the bank, and in fact, they're living on the street. I know that there are ways of checking on things, and the dating services, no doubt, have ways of vetting persons. But personally, my own opinion is that hmm, it's a tough one, because I know people tell me, I'm single and I'm never going to meet someone. But I still prefer, in my way of thinking, I still prefer the idea of meeting someone face to face and having a long term getting to know that person. So I guess my final answer on the topic is that or my bottom line answer, not my final necessarily, but my bottom line answer is there might be dating services, Christian dating services, that are okay. In my own experience of individuals who have used dating services, I have seen some really bad situations, and so I don't recommend them personally. I can't say this is what you ought to do or ought not to do, but personally, I don't really recommend them. And if you do use them, I strongly recommend that you are very careful to carry out the other parts of what I talked about tonight in terms of choosing a mate. And most definitely, don't get married without premarital counseling.
You know, premarital counseling and counseling per se is one of my big things because for years, and I've said this, mentioned this before, um, counseling has been so frowned upon, and it's not as prevalent that we find Christian based counselors. And, you know, in my era, the fact that you went to a counselor meant that you're crazy, and
Mhm. Yeah.
but I am so ecstatic to be able to talk to you because being from that world, you know, it's good to be able to talk to someone who's from that world and to realize that no, you don't have to be crazy, but sound advice and having someone to really verbalize your feelings to can be very beneficial and not really you're psychologically unsound because you're seeking help.
Mhm. You know, it's very interesting to me that we would even think as Christians to leave the care of the mind to persons who are not Christians. And so that is one of the reasons why I actually believe that we ought to have more Christian counselors and psychologists because the mind was designed by God. And we believe that the mind was designed by God. And we understand the interaction between physical and mental and social and spiritual. So we look at the person in a holistic way. And we base our principles, we base our fundamental principles on Christian principles. At the same time, we now have that knowledge and that working along with the Holy Spirit to combine with the scientific knowledge about how the body and the mind works. And it's okay for we need to know that. We need to know how our minds and our bodies work and how behavior is actually directed by our brain. Every behavior, every single behavior that we do as human beings is directed by our brains. We need to understand that, the working of that. And so if it's okay for us to go to the physician when our pancreas malfunctions, it's okay to go to the psychiatrist or psychologist when our brain malfunctions because both
Yes.
organs belong to the body. They're both organs within the body. So it's there's no disgrace in having diabetes, right? It's something that happened, because the pancreas malfunctioned, or there's no disgrace in even going to the doctor because we have bronchitis or asthma, because that's a physical problem. So behavioral problems are also physical problems because the malfunction is in the brain. But when it comes to marriage, we're not even talking about something malfunctioning. We're actually talking about wellness care. So it's like how we have our annual physical every year, not because we feel sick, but because we want to avoid getting sick. So when we go for premarital counseling, there's nothing wrong with a person who's coming for premarital counseling necessarily. As a matter of fact, the person who goes for premarital counseling is very healthy mentally because they're able to recognize that they need to make sure that everything is functioning well so that their marriage can function well.
Well,
So it's a healthy habit.
yes, 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 yes. Dr. Gordon, do you have, for those who might be interested in speaking more with you, do you have some contact information for us? Um,
Yes, actually, I had a final slide that has my name and phone number and website. If anyone wants to contact me, but I can also say it. I am actually in private practice at the moment, and my counseling service is Gordon Counseling and Consulting. My contact information there is 610-537-5841. My website is www.bgordoncounseling.com. And my email address, which is actually not on that slide, is Dr. Gordon, drgordon06 @yahoo.com.
Dr. Gordon, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for taking your time out, because I know, just in trying to for us to connect, you're such a busy person. And I really do appreciate you spending the time with us and giving us some insights on how to choose a mate. And I'm praying that this is that someone somewhere has benefited from this very, very enlightening talk. Thank you so very much for being here with us on In Search of, and I'm hoping to get you back to do some more things for us, because you got it. So
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
we're asking everybody to, we're going to wrap up now, and we're asking everybody to join us next month, April 22nd at 7 p.m. when we go In Search of again. You all have a very blessed night, and good night until next time.